I will summon forth my one little spell because I'm just so little, and die, you monster. Oh, it killed it! I can now cast more magic as I am now more powerful. Yes, in the space of a few seconds, I now have the power of the universe in my hands. You will all die. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great Player. My name is Guy and today we're looking at leveling up times 5. Why times 5? Well, because when you level up you just get that much stronger. 5 times stronger. Well, maybe not 5 times, although sometimes it certainly feels like there's a massive jump from one level to the next. How do we make that feel as if it's part of our character journey rather than just a mathematical thing that just happened to our characters? Well, that's what we're going to unpack in this week's episode. And I think that it's important to bear in mind that not all systems allow for leveling up. Some systems don't allow for leveling up. They have a different progression. Even so, a character that could once only have 1 pip in something now has 2, or the dice are no longer the same that are being rolled, or however it's expressed. The way that we handle our characters leveling up and growing as individuals in terms of their skill and ability, I think is a major role-playing opportunity that a lot of people miss out upon, and when they don't, they can tell some absolutely amazing stories. So we're going to look at seeding, we're going to look at playing, we're going to look at acquiring, we're going to look at testing, and we're going to look at sharing. And those are, I think, the 5 fundamental spaces that you need to be in every single time your character changes or evolves. Now, why do I say that? Well, I'll handle that at the end of the video. So for now, let's just go and have a look. Seeding. The important thing about seeding is that you need to choose beforehand where you're going. A lot of people have got character progression paths planned up, right the way up to level 20 if you even have levels. Others have gone, well, I want my character to be this. And generally speaking, we usually have an idea of where the character's going. There are times when, of course, we realize through roleplay that the character definitely shouldn't be going in that direction, and they change and they alter. I had that happen to a character that I'm playing in the After Dark show with several other role players, and my character realized that they really shouldn't be a warrior. They should go back to their roots of being a mage. And so when they had the opportunity of leveling up, they didn't follow warrior, they went mage. I did, however, still have in my head that this was what was going to happen. It wasn't a sudden surprise at the moment of leveling that I made this split decision. I had anticipated its arrival. So you need to choose beforehand roughly where your character is going. You also, and I know that absolutely none of these rules, so let me state this right now, absolutely nothing of what I'm going to say in this video is required by the rule systems. In general, I've never encountered a rule system where you have to preempt where your character is going to advance or level up. There are some that reward you for using those skills, and those skills naturally progress, but generally speaking, there is no rule that states you have to follow what I am even suggesting in this video. All of what I am suggesting in this video is to help improve you play and to have a better character experience. So there's no rule saying that you have to. You can just cold level without any of this whatsoever. So just bear that in mind. So the character should start to focus on the leveling up process. So I've got the name Jorik written down here. If you don't know who Jorik is a character played by Tobias in one of my games, The Adventures of the Windswift, which is on our sister channel and is released every Monday, except for today because I forgot. So it does get released as irregularly as clockwork, and it features the exploits, the shenanigans, and the crazy antics of the crew of the Windswift. Jorik is a character who has earned levels. We're using the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but before he leveled up, he had his character doing some bizarre things that really made the rest of us sit back and go, I'm not sure what's going on here. Why is Jorik doing this? When the crew had downtime, he literally had his character attempting to phase out of existence. He would sit on the deck for hours, focusing on a distant spot and then opening his eyes to see if he'd got there or not. It was a mind technique that he had heard about and that he felt his character would want to achieve. All that he was doing was demonstrating the character trying to get better at something, so that when his character then leveled up, his character had actually mastered the technique that he was trying to learn. It was a remarkable demonstration of seeding the character's focus, the character's choices, in anticipation of leveling up. And when he did eventually level up, there was a round of congratulations from the rest of the characters. Oh, all that practice, all of that effort is now paying off. You can actually teleport from one area to another. Well done, it's brilliant. Another player in the same game, Con, asked the other characters to help train him to use a sword because he was anticipating going down a different path. He thought his character was going to multi-class into a more fighter-typed class rather than the druid that he currently is. So there are at least 2 instances that I can think of where he purposefully got the weapon out from the storage locker and asked one of the other characters to train him up in the use of that weapon. Again, it was just showing us that the character was thinking about its own future, the player was thinking about the character's future, and was going through steps to make sure that that happened. It created a beautiful organic experience where we got a sense of the life that these characters live outside of just running around and slaying monsters and defeating dragons. Now, you actually need to play this out. So, you need to spend time. Have your character spending time doing what you want them to do. Have them practicing it. Have them demonstrating it. Adressai, another character from the Adventures of the Windswift. Between Jenny's character and Jorik's character, or Tobias's character, Jorik and Adressai, they practiced this technique of teleporting up into the air and then one of them casting fly and catching the other, or reverse teleportation, and using location swapping. And they were doing this all over the place, and they would fail because they didn't have the skills. They did not have the abilities at the time that they were practicing them. So they would teleport off the ship and land in the water and have to swim back to the ship. Again, it was a moment. It maybe took 5 or 6 minutes in our role-playing block for them to go through this and for them to practice it and for them to demonstrate it. It made it feel so wonderful when the 2 of these later on, and I don't even think the episodes come out yet, start to put those practice sessions to good use. It makes it so much more believable, so much more achievement feeling, to use bad English. It felt much more like an achievement than it would normally have if they had just leveled up, because we have been on this journey with them. So you then need to spend time doing that and thinking about how your character would express this. How would you, as the player, get your character to actually actively go about developing a skill that they don't yet have? It creates an interesting role-playing question for you, and then once you start demonstrating it, and once you start practicing it with other characters, that's even better, because now you're engaging your fellow players' characters, which is the ultimate, in my opinion, of what players should do. You're now starting to create this very strong bond between the characters in the environment within the party, as well as setting up this amazing event that's going to happen. Once you've acquired these skills, it's always good to ask the GM, how does the GM want to handle leveling? Is it an instantaneous thing? Is it a moment? Does it just suddenly happen and the characters are more powerful? Are they stronger? Or is it something that they have to walk through? They have to gradually acquire these things? Do they have to travel to special locations and areas to get hold of the training? Do they need mentors? Do they need masters? Do they need to use the skill in the previous adventures and things to prove that they have been practicing? How does the GM want the game to progress? Because that's important. Something to also bear in mind is that all of those seeding and practice sessions that we were talking about earlier, all of that kind of stuff, it mustn't hinder the storyline. It mustn't take away from the actual story. So don't spend an entire session in a practice session or trying to achieve something which is really just part of the narrative. And this is the important part, is don't think that now suddenly you have to spend an entire mission learning how to level up. It's not that far. It's a few brief moments. Now, Blackston, who's played by Simon, Blackston was going to level up to a significant milestone level within the paladin path that he has chosen. But he felt as the player that his character had not spent sufficient time in contemplation, in doing a vigil in the chamber of his god, in the space of his god. He wanted the character to have a revelationary moment before the character leveled up. So although I had said all of the other characters, I had said blanket character level up, we used milestone leveling, you can all level up, he as the player chose that his character would not yet level up. He kind of held it in reserve until the character went and had a spiritual moment with his god. At that point, he felt that then Blackston, the character, was ready to level up, and it made sense that the character now had this greater ability to perceive the divine and to perceive undead and all of the things that came with his class leveling up. It didn't hinder the story. He was already a very powerful character in terms of combat and in terms of providing support to his fellow characters. And even though his fellow characters were now technically a level ahead, it still didn't create a huge discrepancy, and he didn't derail the plot or the story focus because of his character refusing to level up. He wanted it to feel as if it was a natural fit and as if it worked well. And that is exactly what happened. Once he did have this moment, we could build it into the story. It allowed for the GM to then say, okay, I see what you're trying to do there. I think that's great. Let's find a moment, but that must feel natural. It must feel as if it wasn't planned. It just occurred. And so by working with the GM, those leveling up moments, and it doesn't have to be every single one of them, but those leveling up moments suddenly start to take on moments of importance for the character as well as for you as the player, of going, yay, I've achieved another level. So it's very important, I think anyway, to look at why and how the character levels up and when the character levels up. I would also then have a period once the character has leveled up of testing it, trying out the new powers. Once I had mastered a certain technique in Photoshop, you can bet your bottom dollar I spent a long time in Photoshop repeating that technique over and over and over and over again because it was so joyful, it was so wonderful to have discovered something that I didn't know about. So when your character does level up, I would say, try out the powers. Show them adapting. Oh, I can now cause this sword to burst into flame. What am I going to do with this? What can I use it for? Because there's no reason why the character levels up and then suddenly knows that they can cast this ability. Again, don't derail the plot or distract from the main storyline, but you can have these moments where, as in most Spider-Man movies, Peter Parker learns how to use his web splitters, whatever, for the first time, or he learns how to climb on the wall for the first time. That, to me, is great moments of character learning and development, and it didn't detract from the main plot. It was a montage. It usually is always a montage of them gaining and gaining power, and then trying out that power and the comedic side of it that goes with it. It doesn't have to be comedic all the time, but it certainly can be there. And then you can show them failing. Oh, well, if I can make a flaming sword, can I make it double in flame size? No, I can't. Okay, so I'm learning my limitations. I'm learning how to work with it. Now, Jorik, again, I go back to this character, he was learning all of these abilities and learning how to control them, and also learning his limits and his extents to which he could use his powers and things. And it hasn't been every single time he leveled up. I absolutely agree. It has been sporadic. That, I think, is because when there's an opportunity for it to come in, if there's a bit of downtime, if the crew or the characters have moments where you can fill it in with one of these interesting events of leveling up, it makes sense to capitalize. But if there isn't an opportunity, then it is an event that happens in the background and the character just seems to be more competent. So the overall idea is that you then share these skills with your fellow party members. It's important that they know, oh, by the way, I can now turn invisible. That is a useful skill. It should be shared. It should be added to the collective. Frequently, the Web Goblin and I get together when we're talking about this channel and say, okay, well, have you got any, what can we do differently? What can we push this? Can we do more? Can we do less? Can we try this? Can we try that? And we test out each other's abilities and skills, and often we'll say, okay, let's try that. Didn't work, wasn't at the right level that we wanted it to be at. Even though we don't necessarily play in a system that uses its levels, I'm not sure. Nonetheless, the idea is that you are going to work with your party to understand your abilities, but also to tactically help you work together as a group better. So many times have I experienced characters on the battlefield where suddenly one of the characters does something and the other one goes, I didn't know you could do that. Oh yeah, I've been able to do it for weeks now. Well, if we'd known that, we could have done this. So by sharing it, not only does it create a wonderful character moment where the characters can work together and develop together and unite, but it also allows you to have a tactical advantage in your combat systems or in any kind of situation, really, where the characters can then work off one another, knowing what the other characters are aware of. Now, just telling your fellow players, oh, by the way, I leveled up, my character can now do this, 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 and that. Yeah, that might work. I guarantee you, though, if you ask somebody else's oh, just come here, I've got this thing. Okay, and can you see me? Can you hear me? Can you smell me? By incorporating the characters into your level up, by showing them, by using them to demonstrate your abilities, it makes that other player remember your character's abilities far better than just sharing a list. Oh, I leveled up. See? Look at all the stuff. Isn't that cool? Incorporate them into your leveling up and it will be that much better. So I think that when we look at leveling up, we can level up in a much better way. We can 5 times our level up. Look at all of these options before we level up, whilst we're leveling up, when we level up, what we do once we have leveled up, and how do we level up. And we bring all of those things together and our leveling up experience is just that much more epic. It's that much more interesting. It's that much more inclusive of our fellow players, which means, hopefully, it is that much better a game for all involved. Those are my thoughts on leveling up. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's overthought? Do you think it's underthought? Perhaps it's kind of thought. I'm not entirely sure what you're thinking, but you now certainly know my thoughts on the matter of leveling up. So, until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming. Okay, so I've leveled up and I quite like it, but I feel that my character hasn't fully subscribed to the idea of them being this Goblin Bell ringer because they're not comfortable using a hammer. So yeah, I've got to go and practice that a little bit. I'll be right back. Well, next week.